Welcome to Jewish Cinematheque, a monthly opportunity to meet with some of the important faces involved with films that tackle the Jewish experience. In each program, we will interface with writers, directors, and actors who have helped create important cinematic works, some here, some in Israel, and some from around the globe. Today we meet Ofir Raul Graizer, one of Israel's up-and-coming film directors whose new work, The Cakemaker, is the winner of the Leah Van Leer Award at last summer's Jerusalem Film Festival and recipient of the award of the Ecumenical Jury at this year's Karlovy Vary Film Festival in the Czech Republic. Ofir not only directed this film, he wrote it and co-produced.
Hallo.
Morgen.
Jeden Mal, wenn ich nach Berlin komme, das ist das erste Platz, ich besuche für deinen Keks.
Wie heißt er?
Itai. Das ist meine Frau.
Und was passiert, wenn sie es rausfindet? Das passiert nie.
Ich darf ja eigentlich nicht darüber sprechen. Es gab einen Unfall in Jerusalem. Oren ist gestorben.
I was wondering if you need a worker here.
The cookies you made, they're very good.
You like them?
I would like to sell them in the cafe. Ow!
ענת, הוא לא יכול להשתמש בתנור, נו, תמתיק את הכשרות שלך.
Your husband, he died, right?
You know my son?
I'm sorry, I didn't know your son.
She doesn't want you here. We don't want you here.
I can't go. Was hast du gemacht?
Ich hab sie geküsst. Hier.
Und was hast du dann gemacht?
Liebe.
Ofir, welcome to Jewish Cinematheque.
Thank you.
So what drove you to tackle this subject? This was your first feature film, and I understand you've been working on it for quite a long period of time.
Yeah, a long time, almost 8 years.
So what drew you in?
Well, it's every film, I think, especially first film, you need a lot of passion to do it. You have to be obsessed about it to get it going. So I think that so many things had to lead to this film, not one or two things. There is inspiration from a story, a real story that happened to people I knew, a friend of mine, or a person who had a double life. He was had a wife and children, and he was having affairs with men. And he died from a disease, and after he died, his wife found out that he was having another life that she never knew. And this is a real story that happened. And
this was a close friend of yours?
It was a friend of mine, not a very close friend, but somebody I knew, and I knew the wife also. And this was 10 years ago, and this was the first thing that led me to say, okay, I want to make a story about that woman. The woman who loses her husband and found out she didn't know everything. And the question of how can you mourn for someone, how can you grieve for someone that when you realize that they lied to you, manipulated you, cheated on you. So this is the first thing. But the other thing is, let's say, the setting of this story is a combination of all kind of things from my life. I mean, it's my love to Jerusalem and Berlin, two of my favorite cities.
You grew up in...
I grew up in Ra'anana.
Right.
And I lived in Jerusalem a couple of times, and it's right now I would say Jerusalem is my favorite city. When I go to Israel, directly to Jerusalem, I don't even stop in Tel Aviv, not a lot. And so this is something that I'm really connected to those two cities. So I placed the story there.
The second city being Berlin.
In Berlin.
Which is where
I live in the last 8 years. I live between Berlin and Jerusalem, and more Berlin now. Once I finish the film, so I'm trying to focus there. So these are the things that are a part of this film, but the other element are the religion. For example, my father is religious, my mother is secular. You see that in the film. Oren, the main character, the man, he comes from a religious family, but his wife, Anat, she's completely secular.
But you see the tension between the family figures and the influence they try and have over her.
Yes, you see the
And this was also in your family growing up?
Yes, for sure, yes. Yes, when we grew up, so we grew up in secular school. My parents decided they were going to send us to secular school, but at home we would keep the tradition. So we will not go on Shabbat, for example, to drive. We would do Yom Kippur. We will do all the holidays. There was no way we will eat non-kosher at home. All kind of things, some of them smaller, some of them bigger, some of them with more influence on me when I became a bit older, when I became a teenager. Then I came out of the closet, so the whole religion thing had received a different meaning.
Was that, I mean, Israel has changed dramatically in the last 20 to 30 years, so that was that really was where you went up against religion? I mean...
Well, I think that I always felt, all of my life, that I don't do well with religion. Because religion is not about belief, and it's not about faith, and it's not about a connection with God. Religion is about rules, and laws, and institutions, and money, and all kind of things that I find very, very far away from the spiritual. Religion should be spiritual and should be internal, not external. This is how I see things, and I'm not don't understand these things, but this is how I see them. And growing up in Israel, in a quite machoistic and quite patriotic society, where the individual doesn't have much place to exist, and there is not much place for criticism, there is not much place for doubting things. I always felt it's not good for me. It's not a place where I can, let's say, live or exist, or at least be happy in this situation. Later, much later, 30 years later, 25 years later, I was for the first time able to connect to the religious side or the traditional side of my childhood. I was able to connect it in a positive way because I found my own way to do it. I have my own way because it's between me and, in heaven.
And you connected those beautiful memories from childhood, the positive ones, with your current situation?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, because it's about finding the important things, the things that you like about this whole system. It's the Friday dinners is something I like very much. All the family sit together. This is important. The traditions are important. They bring back nostalgia. They bring back food, smells. This is what I can relate to. And, I think in a broader spiritual way, I think it's something that you cannot define.
Now, you made a choice to move to Berlin, and that seems to be a very common thing. A lot of Israeli artists, filmmakers, writers are now finding their way to Germany, to Berlin in particular. It's less expensive, and there is an amazing artistic flavor to the city. Did that have anything to do with your sort of finding yourself?
Actually, no. Actually, no. For me, Berlin was completely a coincidence. It was completely unplanned. I finished film school, and right after I finished, there was a student exchange program, and somehow I got to be in Berlin. I've never been in Berlin before. I hardly been traveling before in the world, and I haven't seen much of the world. And I just found myself 1 month in Berlin, working on some student project with other students, with filmmakers from my film school and from Potsdam, the film school in Potsdam, and we were just having a good time in Berlin. And then I said, oh, it's a nice place. I feel good. I want to stay here. And then I stayed. I mean, I went back to Israel. I finished my diploma, and then I came back to Berlin for another 3 or 4 months. And these 3 or 4 months, again, without understanding it, they became longer and longer and longer and longer. And I just, it's been 8.5 years.
But it seems that you're not the only one, and this is, there's a German piece to the film. I mean, you have your main character coming to Berlin and connecting with a German. And can you just talk a little bit about that and what that represents for you? You know, you as an Israeli, you are still not German. You're different. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think that when you take the Israeli-German context, of course, you always think about the past and the Holocaust and all of this. And this is, of course, a part of it. You know, it's always present. It's always in the context. But what I was really eager to do with this film is the same thing I was eager to do with myself, is to get out of this context and say that right now, these people, they are private people. They represent nothing. They represent no one, only themselves, their own wishes, their own thoughts. And this is for me what this means. Of course, it's there, but all the subject of the film, everything we touch in the film is the religion, the nationality, the kosher, not kosher, the gay or straight, all of these things, I'm saying they are a part of this reality, of course, but I want to erase them. And I want to say, we are people. We have our own way. And I think one of the things that Anat, the widow in Jerusalem, she's doing Shabbat dinner. She invites Thomas, the German guy. She invites him for Shabbat. And she sits there with her son, and she tells her son, you know, we can do the blessing, the kiddush. You want to do it, yes or no? Whatever you want. And the son says, okay, let's do it. And she said, okay, great to do it. And they do it. And they do it with their heart, and they do it with their soul, and they do it, you know, until the end. And this is a way. You know, it's not, you don't have to specify things, you don't have to define things, you don't have to put them in categories. You can just do them in a harmonic, fluid way, which works with who you are, you know, because we are people, we are complex.
So there are some, you said earlier that you felt as a youngster you were not able to express yourself, to really be who you are. And there are some who say, well, you know, one of the issues with Israeli cinema today is that it tackles difficult problems, difficult issues. I mean, the very fact that there's a homosexual character or characters in this film, is this, you know, do you feel that today you're free to express yourself as an Israeli filmmaker, and this is your vehicle?
Well, for sure it's my vehicle, because this is how I express myself, through film. I think it's not about today because the society has changed or the world has changed. I think it's today because I change. I'm an older person than I used to be. You know, I'm less angry than I used to be. I'm also, I think, more pessimistic than I used to be. And this is why I see these things. This is why I relate to them and talk about them. I don't think any big changes have happened in society or in freedom. I think that,
you don't think Israel is now much more of an open society than it may have been a decade or two ago?
Depends who you
especially
ask.
in Tel Aviv?
Depends who you ask.
Okay.
Depends where you go to. Do you go to the poor people? Do you go to the rich people? Do you go to the middle class? I mean, what is more open? If you ask today children, or let's say teenager at the age of 16 or 17, you will ask them questions about general knowledge, what they learn in school, and you will find that they don't know as much as we, in my generation or the generation before, did, because the education system is...
Unfortunately, that's probably the case all across the world, certainly
yes,
in this country.
It's all over the world happening now, decline. We are declining everywhere. The world is not becoming a more tolerant place and more open place, becoming less tolerant, more apathetic to suffering, more closed, more segregated. The world is going backwards in the last, I think, 5-10 years. It's going backwards 15, 60 years.
And yet you're using this vehicle of cinema to try and change that.
Well, I don't think I can change that, but I think the reason I do this, the reason I tell the stories that I choose to say with this film, with the next film I'm working on, the short films I did before the Cakemaker, is I try to relate to that. I try to relate to those issues and I talk about them and bring an angle to them which will allow maybe for us to identify with people that we don't necessarily understand.
It's interesting that you choose a bake shop, a bakery, as one of your key centers of encounter. What drew you to baking, or this today in today's world? It seems like baking and cooking is so much an integral part of just everyday discussion. But here you have the encounter at the bake shop. So tell us a little bit about your connection with baking.
Well, I just really love baking. I love eating cakes. It's the food beyond being a wonderful element of pleasure. It's pleasure because, of course, you can eat rice. You don't have to eat a cake. You can eat rice, or you can have a coffee with sugar, and that's it. But when you go to baking or to bake a cake, or even just a meal, when you give special attention to it, so you focus on it, you develop it, you amplify it. So why you do that? You do that mostly because it gives you pleasure. It's tasty. It tastes good. It's good for the taste. But the other thing, which is also a part of it, is let's say the emotional effect that it has on us. The food, and mostly the baking. Baking, cooking all, but baking mostly is related to the essence of our souls as human beings. It is the things we ate as children. It's the things our mother cooked for us when we were young. It is the thing we went looking for with children after school with our friend. We would go and get some pastry or something. It's connected to our childhood, to our memories, to our nostalgia, to our grandmother, to our grandfather. It's connected to questions of the lack of food. Place it in the context, again, the German-Israeli. Food is really, really important, and for us, for Jews, it's extremely a part of our culture, of our tradition. All of the traditions are about the food. When you do the Seder Pesach, nobody cares about the Haggadah. They just want to eat, okay, except my father, he's the only one, but it's like even that, the Haggadah is centered around when you're going to eat the egg and when you're going to eat the matzah, It's around that because it's symbolic, because it's connected with the question of freedom and slavery. I mean, through the food, through this piece of bread. something which has so many ideas and so many thoughts beyond it and so many connotations and emotional context that it creates.
Now, you're an Israeli and you have family that came from different parts of the world. Does that play into this? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, my mother is, she has a mixed background. Her mother was Bulgarian and her father was half Greek, half Italian. And my father is from Poland, from a small village near Warsaw, both of his parents. And both my parents were born in Palestine, so right before the thing. No, actually my father was born in Palestine. My mother was born a year after Israel. It was created, 49. And their food, the food that we had at home was of course influenced by all of these things. And it's, you know, this mixed background is, it's also, it's something I also, I mean, I try to put it in the film in a way, because let's say one of the things that my mother used to cook a lot when we were children is stuffed paprika. We take the peppers with the rice, you know. So they do in the
Stuffed
films,
peppers, yeah.
Yeah, so in the film, the grandmother, the religious grandmother, who, by the way, if you know Hebrew, she has a little accent, a little East European accent. She's actually Bulgarian, just like my, and but the actress is Romanian, so you know you can't mix. So she sit together with this German guy, and they don't talk. They just sit and they stuff the peppers with rice.
And there seems to be a love, almost an attraction in their inability to converse, but they converse through the food.
Exactly, because this is how we talk, you know.
There's a great moment in the film when Tomas and Anat are sitting there and they're preparing, was it challah? They're kneading it and they're banging on the challah.
Yeah, they make chocolate rolls.
Oh, it was chocolate rolls, and it's just beautiful, powerful moment. Yet you contrast the bakery in Germany with the cafe bakery in Jerusalem. Can you talk about the contrast and how they're different and alike? And I noticed that even the way you shot the film in Germany and the way you shot it in Jerusalem, very different styles.
Yeah. Well, the bakery in Berlin, it's like an old world. It's a part of history. It's like a history book. The cakes are recipes that Thomas maybe got from his grandmother. Some of them are very refined, like the black forest cake, the Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte. Some of them are very simple, like the Apfelstrudel or the Apfelstreusel. You know, this very like typical German pastries, which you can find all over East Europe. And I think many of let's say my parents, you know, people they know from their age, people who came from Europe, this is the kind of cakes they remember from childhood. And in Jerusalem, it's a cafe, it's not a bakery. It will become, in a way, a bakery because they will just start to make crazy cakes. But it's a small, simple cafe owned by one woman, and it's local food. It's shakshuka and salad and sandwiches, something very simple, something very, very warm, something very, like I say, less complicated. And what I wanted to do is to clash those two. And you take this cafe and in it start to create this classical East European pastries, you know. And I think that the way we shot it is just like that. We shot it in the beginning. We made the Cafe Credenz in Berlin very warm, the colors are very brown, wooden, warm. And the one in Jerusalem, we made it a bit colder, but also very raw, with colors like brown and green, which is, it's about earth and you know. and flowers. There are a lot of flowers, you know. So we wanted to create these two different ideas and then combine them and break them. And this is how we did all the color palettes of the film, actually.
This is a film, as I mentioned, that is on so many different levels. It's about relationships. It's about loneliness. It's about tenderness. It's about caring. And yet, it's critical. It raises some very difficult questions about being a Jew, about being an Israeli. People sometimes say, you know, these Israeli filmmakers are asking questions that shouldn't be put on the screen for the rest of the world to watch. Why are we putting all of these problems out for the world?
Yeah, when I tell you, like, first of all, I think it's our job to criticize and to ask questions and to arouse conflicts. First of all, as filmmakers, but also, if we're being specific, as Jews. I mean, it is a part of our essence to doubt and to ask, and you know, it's you know what they do in the yeshiva. They don't just sit and read. No, they talk about it. They fight about it. They argue about it. This is the strength. We are the folk, you know, the people of the book. So we need to talk and open the book and read it, you know, and talk about it. So I think it's necessary. Not just that it's okay, it's necessary to talk about all the difficulties. And if the world watches, let the world watch. We're not dealing with propaganda. We're not dealing with telling a story that somebody paid us, you know. Nobody pays us, you know. We don't make any money from these movies, you know. We deal with raising questions and telling stories and telling sensible stories about people. And it is absolutely necessary that we talk about everything and that we put everything on the table. It's necessary.
With that in mind, I'm going to just say that it's the kind of film you shouldn't be watching alone. You should be watching with friends. And you should be talking and discussing and questioning as you watch this film. The Cakemaker is being screened all across North America. I highly recommend it. And I thank Ofir for joining us today and for sharing some thoughts.
Thank you very much.
And lots of luck with the film.
Thank you.